Hype Williams' gritty 1998 debut, Belly, wasn't just another crime drama, it was a chaotic production where cast members showed up drunk and high. The entire budget got blown on one opening scene, and Jay-Z almost played the lead role instead of DMX. From real marijuana being smoked on camera, to bizarre casting decisions involving TV drug prevention shows, this cult classic hides some of the most unexpected behind-the-scenes secrets in hip-hop cinema history. Fact 1. The opening scene ate the entire budget. When most filmmakers talk about budget constraints, they usually mean cutting corners here and there throughout production. But Hype Williams took a completely different approach with Belly in 1998, essentially gambling his entire $3 million budget on one spectacular opening sequence. Much of that money was poured into filming the movie's unforgettable nightclub robbery scene at the former Tunnel nightclub in New York City, leaving the rest of the production scrambling to make ends meet. The Tunnel was already a legendary venue in New York's nightlife scene, known for its massive space and cutting-edge lighting systems. Williams saw this as the perfect location to create something visually stunning that would set the tone for his entire film. The opening sequence features DMX, Nas, and their crew executing a violent heist under pulsing strobe lights and blacklight effects that make the characters glow in eerie blues and purples. The scene is filmed like a music video, with Williams using his signature style of dramatic lighting and slow-motion shots to create an almost dreamlike atmosphere. What makes this budget decision even more remarkable is that Williams was a first-time feature film director, having built his reputation directing music videos for major hip-hop artists. He was essentially betting everything on his ability to create one scene so memorable and visually striking that it would carry the entire movie. The gamble meant that the rest of Belly had to be made with whatever money remained, which explains some of the production problems that plagued the film later on. The opening scene's expensive production values show in every frame. From the elaborate lighting setup to the coordinated choreography of the robbery itself, Williams transformed what could have been a standard crime scene into something that looked more like an avant-garde art piece, with the blacklight effects creating an otherworldly atmosphere that audiences had never seen before in a mainstream film. Fact 2. Cast members showed up drunk and high. The production of Belly turned into a chaotic nightmare that would make most Hollywood executives break out in cold sweats, with cast members regularly showing up to set under the influence of alcohol and drugs. What made this situation even more challenging was that approximately 95% of the cast consisted of musicians rather than trained actors, many of whom had little to no experience with the professional demands and scheduling requirements of film production. Unlike traditional movie sets where actors arrive on time, know their lines, and follow strict professional protocols, the Belly production became notorious for its unpredictable daily schedule. Cast members would frequently arrive late to filming sessions, sometimes hours behind schedule, while others would show up intoxicated or high on various substances. This created a domino effect of delays and complications that plagued the entire $3 million production from start to finish. The casting choice to use primarily musicians instead of professional actors was deliberate on director Hype Williams' part, as he wanted to capture authentic street credibility and raw energy that trained actors might not be able to deliver. However, this decision came with significant drawbacks that became apparent almost immediately when filming began. Many of these musician actors were accustomed to the more relaxed atmosphere of recording studios and music video shoots, where schedules are often more flexible and the work environment tends to be less structured than traditional film sets. The production team found themselves constantly dealing with the fallout from these issues, having to reschedule scenes, work around missing cast members, and sometimes film around actors who were not in optimal condition to perform. These problems were compounded by frequent clashes between Williams and the film's producers, who were already struggling with budget constraints and the pressure to complete the movie on schedule. The combination of financial stress, scheduling chaos, and unprofessional behavior created a perfect storm that made Belly one of the most difficult film productions of the late 1990s. Fact 3. Jay-Z was originally considered for DMX's role. Before DMX became the explosive lead character Tommy Bundy in Belly, director Hype Williams seriously considered casting Jay-Z for the film's title role, a decision that would have completely changed the trajectory of both the movie and possibly Jay-Z's career. This casting consideration happened during a very different time in Jay-Z's career, when he was still building his reputation and hadn't yet become the global superstar and business mogul that audiences know today. Williams later explained his reasoning behind considering Jay-Z for the part, stating that back in the late 1990s, Jay-Z hadn't reached his peak fame yet and was still known simply as Jay-Z rather than the iconic figure he would later become. The director was drawn to Jay-Z's authentic street background and real-life experiences, which Williams felt would bring genuine credibility to the character of Tommy Bundy. As Williams put it, Jay-Z was a real hustler who came from a legitimate street background, making him a natural fit for the role of a ruthless drug dealer climbing the criminal ladder. The connection between Williams and Jay-Z made sense from a business perspective as well, since the film was being developed in partnership with Def Jam Records, where Jay-Z was already an established artist. This relationship would have made casting negotiations smoother and potentially helped with the film's marketing and soundtrack promotion. Jay-Z's involvement could have brought additional star power and street credibility to the project, especially given his growing reputation in the hip-hop community. However, Williams ultimately decided to go with DMX instead, a choice that many industry insiders initially questioned since DMX was relatively unknown at the time. Williams faced criticism for this casting decision early in the production process, with many people wondering why he would choose an unproven artist over someone with Jay-Z's established reputation and natural charisma. Interestingly, Jay-Z still contributed to the film's soundtrack, appearing on 2 tracks that helped establish the movie's musical identity and maintained his connection to the project, despite not landing the lead role. Fact 4. Real marijuana was smoked on set. In most Hollywood productions, when actors appear to be smoking marijuana on screen, they're actually using fake props made from herbs like oregano, or specially designed smoking blends, that look realistic but contain no actual cannabis. However, the production of Belly took a completely different and much more controversial approach by having cast members smoke real marijuana during filming, making the drug use scenes entirely authentic rather than simulated. This decision to use actual cannabis on set was part of director Hype Williams' overall commitment to creating an authentic street atmosphere throughout the film. Williams wanted every aspect of the movie to feel genuine and raw, from the casting of real musicians instead of trained actors to the locations chosen for filming. The use of real marijuana fit into this philosophy of prioritizing authenticity over traditional Hollywood safety protocols and legal considerations that typically govern film productions. The choice to allow real drug use during filming created additional complications for what was already a chaotic production schedule. Using actual marijuana meant that cast members were genuinely under the influence while trying to deliver their performances, which likely contributed to some of the acting inconsistencies and unprofessional behavior that plagued the shoot. This approach also raised significant legal and insurance concerns, as most film productions have strict policies against actual drug use on set due to liability issues and the need to maintain professional working conditions. What makes this decision even more remarkable is that it happened during the late 1990s, when marijuana laws were much stricter than they are today, and the entertainment industry was generally more conservative about such practices. Most directors and producers would have considered this approach far too risky from both legal and practical standpoints, but Williams was determined to capture the most realistic portrayal possible of street life and drug culture. The real marijuana use was just one example of how Belly pushed boundaries and ignored conventional filmmaking rules in pursuit of what Williams believed would be a more powerful and authentic final product. Fact 5. Actors were constantly covered in baby oil. One of the most unusual and uncomfortable aspects of filming Belly involved director Hype Williams' obsession with creating what he called a shiny look by constantly applying baby oil to his actor's skin throughout production. This bizarre beauty technique became such a regular part of the filming process that cast members grew accustomed to being slicked down with oil before almost every scene, creating a glossy, almost surreal appearance that became one of the movie's most distinctive visual elements. Williams was determined to achieve a specific aesthetic that would make his characters appear to glow under the dramatic lighting setups he had designed for the film. The baby oil created a reflective surface on the actor's skin that caught and amplified the colorful lights used throughout the movie, giving everyone an otherworldly, almost supernatural appearance that fit perfectly with the film's dreamlike visual style. DMX himself referred to this constant oil application as creating this shiny look, though it's unclear whether he appreciated the process or simply tolerated it as part of Williams' artistic vision. The practical challenges of keeping actors covered in baby oil throughout long filming days created additional complications for what was already a difficult production. The oil had to be constantly reapplied between takes, which added time to an already stretched schedule and created logistical problems for the makeup and wardrobe departments. Costumes became stained and difficult to clean, while actors had to deal with the discomfort of being constantly greasy and slippery during physical scenes and action sequences. This attention to creating the perfect, shiny look was just one example of Williams' perfectionist approach to the film's visual elements, even when it created practical problems for everyone involved. According to a 2008 oral history of the production, this obsession with the oil treatments was part of a larger pattern of Williams going to extreme lengths to achieve his artistic vision, regardless of how it affected the comfort of his cast or the efficiency of the production schedule. Fact 6. The film references Harmony Korine's Gummo. In one of the most unexpectedly artistic moments in Belly, director Hype Williams included a direct reference to Harmony Korine's controversial 1997 film Gummo by having his characters watch it during a party scene at DMX's luxurious home. After the explosive opening nightclub robbery sequence, the crew returns to Tommy Bundy's extravagant white mansion, where DMX's character decides to entertain his guests by projecting scenes from Gummo onto his living room wall, creating a surreal contrast between the gangster lifestyle and experimental art house cinema. Gummo was an extremely unconventional and disturbing film about teenagers in a tornado-devastated Ohio town, known for its bizarre imagery and nonlinear storytelling that confused and unsettled most mainstream audiences. The movie featured strange scenes of kids killing cats, unusual characters engaging in destructive behavior, and an overall atmosphere of decay and hopelessness that made it nearly incomprehensible to viewers expecting traditional narrative structure. This made it an incredibly odd choice for gangsters to be watching during their celebration party. The scene becomes even more entertaining because of Nas's genuine confusion and repeated questions about what they're actually watching. Throughout the Gummo footage, Nas keeps asking variations of the same bewildered question, clearly unable to understand or appreciate what he's seeing on screen. His repeated confused reactions provide some of the film's funniest moments, as his character tries to make sense of Korine's deliberately bizarre and unsettling imagery while everyone else seems to accept it as normal background entertainment. This reference to Gummo was particularly significant because it showed Williams' awareness of contemporary art house cinema and his desire to position Belly within a broader cinematic conversation, rather than just as another straightforward crime movie. The inclusion also demonstrated Williams' willingness to interrupt his own narrative flow with references to other films, creating a layered viewing experience that rewarded audiences familiar with underground and experimental cinema, while simultaneously puzzling those who weren't expecting such artistic references in a hip-hop gangster film. Fact 7. This was Hype Williams' only feature film. Despite being one of the most influential and visually innovative directors in music video history, Hype Williams made the surprising decision to direct only one feature film during his entire career, with Belly serving as both his debut and his final venture into full-length cinema. This makes Williams part of an extremely rare group of directors who created just a single feature film before returning permanently to their previous medium, leaving audiences and film critics wondering what other movies he might have made if he had continued in Hollywood. Williams built his reputation throughout the 1990s as a groundbreaking music video director, creating iconic visuals for some of the biggest names in hip-hop and R&B, including Missy Elliott, Busta Rhymes, and TLC. His signature style featured fisheye lenses, vibrant colors, futuristic sets, and innovative special effects that pushed the boundaries of what music videos could achieve artistically. Many of his videos became cultural phenomena in their own right, establishing him as one of the most sought-after directors in the music industry. After Belly's release in 1998, Williams could have easily transitioned into a successful Hollywood career, especially given the growing trend of music video directors moving into feature films. Directors like Spike Jonze, David Fincher, and Michel Gondry all made similar transitions and went on to become acclaimed filmmakers with multiple successful movies to their credit. Williams had proven with Belly that he could create visually stunning cinema and work with major stars, yet he chose to return exclusively to music videos. The reasons behind Williams' decision to abandon feature filmmaking remain largely mysterious, as he has rarely discussed this choice in interviews. Some industry observers speculate that the chaotic and stressful production experience of Belly may have discouraged him from pursuing more film projects, while others suggest that he simply preferred the creative freedom and shorter time commitments that music video work provided. Since Belly, Williams has continued directing music videos for major artists including Jay-Z, Beyoncé, and Kanye West, maintaining his status as one of the most innovative visual artists in the music industry. Fact 8. Magic Johnson banned the film. When Belly was released in November of 1998, the film faced an unexpected form of censorship from an unlikely source. Magic Johnson Theaters, the movie theater chain owned by the legendary basketball player Magic Johnson. The theater chain made the controversial decision to ban Belly from being shown on any of their screens, citing what they described as negative and violent depictions of African Americans as their primary reason for refusing to screen the film. This ban was particularly significant because Magic Johnson Theaters had been specifically created to serve urban communities and provide entertainment options in neighborhoods that were often underserved by major theater chains. Johnson had positioned his theaters as spaces that would be welcoming to African American audiences and would show films that reflected their experiences and interests. The decision to ban Belly suggested that Johnson and his theater management believed the film crossed a line in terms of how it portrayed Black characters and communities. The controversy highlighted the ongoing debate within African American communities about how Black life should be represented in popular entertainment, especially in films that dealt with crime, violence, and drug dealing. Some critics and community leaders felt that movies like Belly perpetuated harmful stereotypes about African Americans, while others argued that these films reflected real experiences and shouldn't be censored simply because the subject matter was uncomfortable or controversial. Magic Johnson's decision to ban the film also drew attention to the power that theater owners have in determining what movies audiences can see, especially in communities where entertainment options may be limited. The ban meant that audiences in areas served primarily by Magic Johnson Theaters would have to travel to other locations if they wanted to see Belly, effectively limiting access to the film for some of the very communities it was trying to represent. This created an ironic situation where a film about urban street life was being blocked from reaching urban audiences by someone who was supposed to be championing their interests in the entertainment industry. Fact 9. DMX wasn't famous, yet during casting. When Hype Williams cast DMX as the lead character Tommy Bundy in Belly, he was taking a massive gamble on a rapper who was virtually unknown to mainstream audiences and hadn't yet established himself as a major force in the hip-hop industry. At the time of filming in 1997 and early 1998, DMX was still grinding in relative obscurity, living in Yonkers, New York. Far from the glamorous lifestyle that his character would portray on screen, the casting decision seemed even more risky when compared to the other options Williams had considered, including established artists like Jay-Z, who already had name recognition and a growing fan base. Many people in the industry questioned Williams' choice to build his entire film around someone who had barely made a dent in the rap world, especially when the movie's success would depend heavily on its lead actor's ability to carry dramatic scenes and connect with audiences. Williams later addressed these concerns in a 20-year reunion interview with Complex magazine, where he clarified just how unknown DMX really was during the casting process. The director explained that DMX wasn't even close to being a star at that point in his career and was living a relatively modest life in Yonkers, which Williams described as being in the middle of nowhere compared to the hip-hop epicenters of Manhattan or Brooklyn. What makes this casting choice even more remarkable is that DMX's breakthrough success happened almost simultaneously with the film's release. His debut album, It's Dark and Hell is Hot, was released in May of 1998, just 6 months before Belly hit theaters in November. The album became a massive commercial success, debuting at #1 on the Billboard charts and establishing DMX as one of the most exciting new voices in hip-hop. This incredible timing meant that by the time audiences saw Belly, DMX had transformed from an unknown Yonkers rapper into one of the hottest artists in the music industry, making Williams' early faith in his potential look like pure genius. Fact 10. The costume designer predicted future hip-hop fashion. Costume designer June Ambrose was tasked with creating not just clothing for Belly's characters, but essentially predicting and shaping what hip-hop fashion would look like in the new millennium, according to director Hype Williams' ambitious vision for the film. Williams specifically told Ambrose that he wanted Belly to serve as a crystal ball for hip-hop style, using the movie as a platform to forecast the direction that rap culture's fashion would take as the world entered the year 2000. Ambrose, who had already established herself as a major force in hip-hop styling through her work on iconic music videos, took this challenge seriously and began incorporating cutting-edge fashion elements that were ahead of their time. She traveled to London to source exclusive pieces and brought several brands into the American market for the first time through their appearance in Belly. One of her most significant introductions was Evisu Jeans, a premium Japanese denim brand that would later become a staple in hip-hop fashion but was virtually unknown in the United States at the time of filming. The costume designer also made strategic use of the Ecko Unlimited Rhino logo for the first time in a major film production, helping to establish what would become one of the most recognizable symbols in urban fashion throughout the early 2000s. This decision to feature emerging brands and forward-thinking designs rather than established fashion houses showed Ambrose's understanding of how hip-hop culture was evolving and where it was headed stylistically. Looking back at Belly more than 2 decades later, Ambrose's predictions proved remarkably accurate, as many of the fashion choices she made for the film became defining elements of hip-hop style in the following years. The shiny, luxurious aesthetic that she created for the movie's characters became a template that influenced countless music videos, red carpet appearances, and everyday street fashion throughout the early 2000s. Her work on Belly demonstrated how costume design in film could actually influence real-world fashion trends, rather than simply reflecting what was already popular at the time. Fact 11. A real civil rights leader played the minister. One of the most surprising casting choices in Belly involved bringing in Dr. Benjamin Franklin Chavis Jr. to play Reverend Savior, the spiritual leader who delivers the film's climactic speech to DMX's character. What made this casting decision so remarkable was that Chavis wasn't just an actor playing a minister, but an actual prominent civil rights leader who had spent decades fighting for social justice and had worked directly alongside some of the most important figures in American history. Dr. Chavis brought incredible authenticity to his role because of his real-world experience as a civil rights activist and religious leader. He had served as an assistant to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. during the height of the civil rights movement, giving him first-hand knowledge of the struggle for racial equality that few actors could match. This background made his performance as Reverend Savior particularly powerful, as he was drawing from genuine experiences rather than simply acting out a script. Beyond his civil rights work, Chavis also held the position of president of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, which represents African American newspapers across the country. His educational credentials were equally impressive, with degrees from St. Augustine University in North Carolina, Duke University, where he earned his Master of Divinity, and Howard University, where he completed his doctorate in ministry. This combination of academic achievement and real-world activism made him uniquely qualified to deliver the film's moral message. The decision to cast Chavis in this crucial role showed Hype Williams' commitment to bringing authentic voices to his film, particularly for the scenes that dealt with spiritual and social themes. Having a real civil rights leader deliver the movie's final moral lesson added weight and credibility to the film's ultimate message about redemption and the possibility of change. Chavis's presence in the film created a direct connection between the fictional story of street criminals and the real-world struggle for African American empowerment and social justice that had been ongoing for decades. Fact 12. The opening song is an a cappella version. The opening sequence of Belly features one of the most unusual and haunting musical choices in cinema history, with the violent nightclub robbery playing out to an a cappella version of Soul II Soul's classic hit Back to Life, However Do You Want Me, rather than the typical hip-hop or R&B instrumental tracks that audiences might have expected. This stripped-down vocal arrangement created an eerie and almost spiritual atmosphere that contrasted sharply with the brutal violence unfolding on screen, making the robbery scene feel more like a religious experience than a typical crime sequence. Soul II Soul's original 1989 version of Back to Life was a massive international hit that blended R&B, hip-hop, and dance music elements with a full instrumental arrangement and driving beat that made it perfect for clubs and radio play. By choosing to use only the vocal elements without any musical accompaniment, Hype Williams transformed the song into something completely different that served his artistic vision for the film's opening moments. The a cappella arrangement allowed the haunting vocal harmonies to float over the violent imagery in a way that created an almost otherworldly effect, especially when combined with the dramatic lighting and slow-motion cinematography that Williams used throughout the sequence. The human voices seemed to comment on the action like a Greek chorus, adding layers of meaning and emotion that a traditional instrumental soundtrack couldn't have achieved. This creative musical choice also demonstrated Williams' background as a music video director and his understanding of how sound and image could work together to create powerful emotional responses from audiences. The decision to strip away all the instrumental elements and focus purely on the vocal performance showed his willingness to take risks and experiment with conventional filmmaking techniques. The a cappella version became so closely associated with the film that many people who saw Belly remember the opening sequence primarily for its unique musical arrangement, rather than just the visual spectacle of the robbery itself. Fact 13. The sequel has no connection to original. 8 years after the original Belly became a cult classic, Hollywood released what was marketed as its official sequel, Belly 2: Millionaire Boys Club, in 2006. But this follow-up film turned out to be a sequel in name only, with absolutely no connection to the characters, story, or world that Hype Williams had created. The only thing the two movies shared was the Belly title, making this one of the most misleading sequels in film history that essentially tricked audiences into thinking they were getting a continuation of the original story. The sequel starred rapper The Game as the lead character, taking over the role that would theoretically have belonged to DMX or Nas if this had been a genuine continuation of their story. However, The Game's character had no relationship to Tommy Bundy or Sincere, the central figures from the first film, and the plot dealt with completely different criminal enterprises and conflicts that bore no resemblance to the original movie's narrative arc. Even more surprising was the complete absence of any returning cast members from the original production, meaning that none of the actors who had helped make Belly a memorable experience were involved in the sequel. This included not just the main stars like DMX, Nas, and Method Man, but also supporting players and even behind-the-scenes personnel who might have provided some continuity between the two projects. The disconnect between the two films extended beyond just casting and characters to include the overall visual style and tone that had made the original Belly so distinctive. While Hype Williams had created a unique aesthetic with his dramatic lighting, colorful cinematography, and music video-influenced direction, the sequel lacked any of these signature elements that fans of the original film would have expected to see carried forward. This made Belly 2, Millionaire Boys Club feel more like a completely separate movie that happened to borrow the Belly name for marketing purposes, rather than a legitimate continuation of Williams' artistic vision and storytelling approach. Fact 14. The casting director recently passed away. Winsome Sinclair, the casting director who was responsible for assembling the unique mix of musicians and actors that made Belly such a memorable film, passed away in August of 2024, bringing renewed attention to her important but often overlooked contribution to the movie's success. Casting directors typically work behind the scenes and rarely receive the same recognition as directors, producers, or actors, but Sinclair's work on Belly was particularly crucial given the unconventional approach of casting primarily hip-hop artists rather than trained professional actors. Sinclair faced the challenging task of finding performers who could bring authenticity to their roles while also being able to handle the demands of a full-length feature film production. This meant identifying rappers and musicians who had the right look, personality, and screen presence to carry dramatic scenes, even if they had little to no previous acting experience. Her decisions shaped the entire feel and credibility of the movie, from the lead roles down to the supporting characters who populated the film's criminal underworld. The casting process for Belly required Sinclair to work closely with director Hype Williams to understand his vision for each character and then find performers who could embody those roles convincingly. This was particularly important for a film that was trying to capture the authentic culture and attitude of late 1990s hip-hop, where casting the wrong people could have made the entire project feel fake or exploitative to the very audience it was trying to reach. Sinclair's passing serves as a reminder of how many talented people work behind the camera to make movies successful, often without receiving much public recognition for their contributions. Her ability to assemble the right combination of established rappers like Nas and DMX, alongside lesser-known performers and even real-life figures like civil rights leader Benjamin Chavis Jr., helped create the authentic atmosphere that made Belly resonate with audiences and eventually become a cult classic in hip-hop cinema. Fact 15. Spring Breakers director paid homage years later. 15 years after Harmony Korine's experimental film Gummo appeared as a bizarre movie within a movie reference in Belly, Korine returned the favor by paying direct visual homage to Hype Williams' techniques in his 2012 crime film Spring Breakers. This created a fascinating full-circle moment between two directors who both specialized in creating unconventional and visually striking cinema that challenged traditional storytelling methods and pushed the boundaries of their respective genres. Korine's Spring Breakers featured two specific sequences that bore unmistakable similarities to signature moments from Belly, showing how Williams' innovative visual style had influenced other filmmakers over the years. The first homage appeared in a montage sequence where the main characters commit a series of robberies filmed in dreamy slow motion and set to a Britney Spears ballad rather than the typical aggressive music that audiences might expect during crime scenes. This approach directly echoed Williams' technique of using unexpected musical choices to create emotional contrast with violent imagery. The second tribute came during Spring Breakers' climactic heist sequence, which featured the same dramatic blacklight effects that had made Belly's opening nightclub robbery so memorable and visually stunning. Korine used these ultraviolet lighting techniques to bathe his characters in otherworldly glows of purple and blue, creating the same surreal atmosphere that Williams had pioneered more than a decade earlier. The blacklight effects transformed what could have been a standard action sequence into something that felt more like a fever dream or music video. This visual conversation between the two directors demonstrated how Belly's innovative cinematography had become part of the broader language of contemporary cinema, influencing other filmmakers who were trying to create their own unique aesthetic approaches. Korine's decision to reference Williams' work so directly also showed his respect for the visual innovations that Belli had brought to crime cinema, even though the original film had been largely dismissed by mainstream critics when it was first released in 1998.